Yes, again, welcome into the Malamut Law pregame show. I'm Mark Farzetta. I'll bring in our panelists today. Bill Collarullo will be joining us a little bit later on in the program. Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joyner, of course, on the show today, and Adam Malamut of Malamut Law as well. Seth, first and foremost, want to get your take on the Lane Johnson situation and the impact him potentially not playing would have on the Eagles today.
Well, there's no doubt about it. It's a big deal. You alluded to the record, but the record doesn't tell the whole story, because whatever the game plan was going into this game is going to be altered big time, because you got to make sure. The last time Jack Driscoll had to step in for Lane, they had all kind of protection issues. So if that's going to be the case going into this game, they're going to have to account for that, meaning that maybe that's the reason why they activated an extra tight end yesterday. Realizing that you're probably going to need help on that side, especially if they want to pass the ball. And they seem to want to pass the ball much more than they actually want to run the football. And for you not to have to change the game plan so drastically, you're already missing Dallas Goedert. So that's one weapon that's already down. So now if you're going to help keep Jalen clean and you're going to throw the ball 35-plus times, then you're going to have to leave a tight end on that side, or the back is going to have to chip before he releases on that side. So this alters a lot of things, not let alone the record. It alters how Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni is going to want to call plays today. They have to be cognizant of that.
Now, when you woke up this morning, Adam, we're looking at a team here in the Buffalo Bills coming into town that have struggled to find some consistency. They haven't won back-to-back games since weeks 3 and weeks 4 this season, and now they're coming off a huge win against the Jets, albeit against the Jets, but a division rival.
Us, though.
But a division rival to them. The Eagles are 9-1. This is supposed to be a win for them. They're home again. They're coming off an emotional win. We could talk about and debate about the trap game a little bit later on. But when it comes to this matchup, Lane Johnson is a huge chunk out of the playbook here for the Philadelphia Eagles. How are you feeling knowing that Lane Johnson's status is now up in the air?
Farzy, Week 11 of 2020. Do you remember where you were?
Week 11 of 2020?
It doesn't really matter, because that was the last time that Lane Johnson gave up a sack. You cannot replace a guy like him. And listen, with full and due respect to Jack Driscoll and any packages they put together to give Jalen Hurts additional protection, this shifts the entire landscape of how they have to call plays. And, this season, personally, I'll speak for myself, I haven't been real happy with how they've called plays for Jalen. Now Jalen's going to miss, one of his 2 key bookends, a guy who, is arguably the best right tackle in the league. And now, I'm worried about the weather conditions. It's cold, it's rainy down at the link. If Jalen gets that ball in his hand and gets a little foot happy, I'm worried about him getting hurt. I'm worried about them not executing right. So it's a little bit of a different game than I thought it was going to be. But I'll tell you, I've been watching this game all week, and I've been worried about this game because this is a must-win for Buffalo. If Buffalo doesn't win, Miami takes one more game lead in the AFC East, and nobody expected that. I think entering the season, Buffalo was the favorite for the AFC East, and giving up that opportunity, they've got to come out and play hard, and I'm worried about this game.
Seth, when we look at a situation like this, obviously the game plan, as Adam's talking about here, with the Eagles' offense changes drastically, not having a right tackle like Lane Johnson, protection, running the football, pass blocking, changes a lot. But from a defensive perspective, for a team like the Buffalo Bills, who are another Jim Johnson disciple with Sean McDermott, just like with Steve Spagnuolo, how much does a defensive game plan shift in being able to maybe potentially exploit the weakness of a Jack Driscoll?
Well, it all comes down to situational football. If they know that they've got him in predictable situations, they're going to bring pressure from that side. They're not just going to put their best pass rusher over there. You're going to see Von Miller line up over there. He's now in spot duty as far as how they play him. He is a pass rush specialist for them in obvious passing situations. But they're also going to run, a lot of their blitzes are going to come from that side. They're going to show on one side, and they're going to bring it from the other side and see whether he can make the right decisions, on that side. Most of the time you take the most dangerous and you let the guy on the outside go. A lot of times, guys that don't play a lot, they make the decision to do the exact opposite sometimes. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about. But listen, this football team, has dealt with this situation before where you've got guys injured and players have to step in. No one's been healthy all season long. They've had guys on the defense in and out all year. They had a few guys on the offensive side, especially on the offensive line that have missed games, here and there. And they found ways to just keep chugging and keep winning. I'm not really worried about this game from that perspective so much as I am, the weather conditions. Because the game against Kansas City, they clearly wanted to throw the football. The weather wouldn't allow them to throw the football. So now we come home a week later, and we're going to be facing similar conditions tonight all over again. I don't know how much rain we're supposed to get, whether it's just misty or what the real weather circumstances are supposed to be. But in a lot of ways, it kind of takes away from what they really want to do. They want to throw the football, and when it's cold and when it's wet, it inhibits your ability to really throw the ball the way that you want to throw it.
I want to get back to something here because a lot's been made this week, and I know Nick Sirianni was asked about it earlier in the week. Brian Johnson was asked about it. Sean Desai was asked about it. But really it does come down to the type of format and strategy that these defenses like to play. Most notably now with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Eagles have faced that, and now they're being asked about the Eagles now facing another disciple of Jim Johnson, being able to go up against a guy like Sean McDermott. When you break it down, Seth, and look at these two defenses, having just looked at the Kansas City Chiefs, now look at the Buffalo Bills, do you see similarities between the two that date back to their time here in Philadelphia?
Well, I don't think either one of them are nearly as aggressive as Jim Johnson was. Let's just state that. But I think Spagnuolo is a lot more aggressive than Sean McDermott is. I feel like, a lot of these teams now, there's a certain fear that comes along with the aggressive nature of the game, but you can see it week after week after week how important pressure and speeding up the clock of quarterbacks is in the National Football League. But they're so afraid of giving up the big play that they're willing to give up on third down. They got their DBs lined up 10 yards off the ball. Well, the message that you're sending to me is that, yeah, we're in bend but don't break mode. I'm willing to give you 3 yards. I'm not willing to give you 50 yards. And to a certain extent, I understand that. But, I'm of the ilk and I'm of the mindset, I give no quarter, no way, no how, at no point in time. Every little inch of real estate that we own belongs to us, and we're trying to keep as much of it as we can. But this is a different NFL, and the mindset is just different in how defensive coordinators call it. So to answer your question, there are going to be some situations where they're going to test Jalen the same way that he was tested last week. But I think at this point in time, they've seen just about everything that you could see. You got Belichick and, his disciple in weeks 1 and 2. Now, you got Jim Johnson's disciples, in weeks 11 and 12 back to back. So what can they throw at him that he hadn't seen, And I think that the coaching staff has done a very good job, as I alluded to last week and I alluded to on my show this week. I just give Brian Johnson a lot more credit than people want to give him credit for, and I get it. Sometimes, he calls plays and it's a little bit of a head scratcher. But when you really delve deep into the adjustment that they made in the second half of last week's game, it's really phenomenal what he and Nick Sirianni came up with. But you have to really, really dig down through the minutia of it all and throw aside, the 2 bubble screens.
No. All day we're going to talk about them bubble screens.
You got. But I'm just saying, you got to throw them aside and understand and see where the checks that Jalen Hurts made on the quarterback sweep on the goal line. That was a check. The pass to Devontae Smith to set him up at the 1. That was a check. Those were obviously adjustments that were made at halftime, things that they saw that they could make adjustments to. Now, you can't just beat them up about the things that you don't like all the time when they do make plays that make the difference in the game, and you can't just ignore that, And when I went back and I looked at the game, I'm like, you know what? They're doing a pretty darn good job on both sides of the football, mind you.
Well, let's break it down like this. So during the week, there was another big thing that was brought up, and it was Brian Johnson. And unprompted, during just answering a question about the offense in general, Nick Sirianni talked about how this offense has not missed a beat since Shane Steichen was here last year. Those were his exact words. We haven't missed a beat. Well, they're only averaging 1 fewer point per game as an offense, and in the yards game, they're only averaging about 30 yards less per game. Both are still in the top 10 in the NFL, which is pretty darn good, especially when you've never called plays at the NFL level before like Brian Johnson. From another offensive standpoint here, when you talk about the red zone is now up to 80% efficiency in scoring in the red zone over the last 3 weeks. So if you want to talk about making adjustments or improving upon things that you have not been able to improve upon since the start of the year, Brian Johnson and this offense have found a way to improve upon. Now, look, like Seth, to your point, you talk about praising when it's appropriate, giving credit where credit's due, and yes, there has also been a lot of room for criticism with Brian Johnson. But, Adam, when you look at him as an offensive coordinator, the question I had going into today that I wanted to kick around to our panelists today, where are we on Brian Johnson? And it's not the incomplete. If you had to go on a pass-fail situation from where the Eagles are right now, from where they left off a year ago, where are you on Brian Johnson as an offensive coordinator?
And before you jump in that far, you got to understand, a couple of weeks ago, the Eagles was ranked 29th in red zone efficiency. They are now ranked 9th in the NFL in red zone efficiency. So, I mean, those types of numbers that a couple of weeks ago we were like, well, everything looks good, everything's trending in the right direction, we got to get over this red zone thing. You know, so now we're going to find something else to nitpick after they've improved there. But now I digress. Go ahead.
Are you in or out on Brian Johnson?
So listen, I've been unfairly critical of Brian Johnson, and I'm okay taking the ownership. I'm not going to say that I'm a Brian Johnson fan, but what I will tell you is that, you know, to Seth's point earlier, this team has not been healthy all season. This team has it's been like one nagging injury after another. We lost Dallas Goedert. We've got Lane Johnson potentially going to be out today. You know, they haven't been in the rhythm that they were. I think last year they were unusually healthy the entire season. So for me to really criticize Brian Johnson like I had in the past, maybe it's not Brian. Maybe it's Jalen Hurts not feeling quite as comfortable at certain times because of his knee and his knee brace. Maybe it's something else. Maybe there's some other factor, but I'll give Brian Johnson a chance because you're right. Those statistics do not lie. And to go to that red zone efficiency, which is where we make the bacon, that's a huge stride. So, look, let's see what happens today. I mean, this type of adjustment, if Lane Johnson's not in, will be very telling for how Brian Johnson scripts his game plan.
Seth, to your point earlier about the bubble screens, we were both in the green room. We were looking at those bubble screens by the Eagles against the Chiefs, and we're thinking, that's not the play to make, that's not the play to make. As the game went on, we later found out the method to the madness is spreading the middle of the field, making sure that the corners and linebackers couldn't cheat into the middle of the field and apply that pressure that we've talked about so many times, the Jim Johnson-esque pressure from a Steve Spagnuolo. So there was a method to the madness there, and the Eagles offense in that second half started to really build on those bubble screens, not using those in particular to actually get big yards, but using them as, for lack of a better term, almost an offensive play call for a decoy in its entirety. But when it comes to Brian Johnson overall, and you see the way he has really manipulated this offense to this point in the season and the improvement it has made, in or out on Brian Johnson to this point?
Well, I mean, listen, how are you out on a guy whose team record is 9-1? I mean, how are you out? Has it been easy? No. But you've heard every player say it. You've heard Nick Sirianni say it. You've heard Jalen Hurts say it. You've heard Jason Kelsey say it. That every year is different. And I think the expectation. I said it at the beginning of the year. Success breeds expanded expectation. An expectation in a way that we're waiting for this team to play the perfect game. And to be honest with you, there is no such thing as a perfect game. Even, with Miami putting 40 points up on the team earlier this year, I'm sure that they could go back to the film and find something that was wrong on both sides of the football that they could correct. So there is no such thing as a perfect game. The objective at the end of the day is to win the football game. Teams have spent the entire offseason, the last 7 or 8 months, trying to figure out ways to stop this offense. There was the number 2 ranked offense right behind the Kansas City Chiefs last year going into the Super Bowl. So obviously there are going to be some changes. There are going to be some challenges. There are going to be, some bumps in the road. but they figured out a way to adjust along the way. And what I'm most encouraged about is that with both Sean Desai and Brian Johnson is that we saw massive growth last week in the second half. As a matter of fact, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row, where this football team has gone in at halftime, hasn't looked good in the first half, came out in the second half with a complete shift, a complete adjustment, and found a way to win the football game.
I feel like it's almost a weekly thing now whenever we talk about the run game. Will this be the game the Eagles run the football? Does Lane Johnson not being here, does it help the odds at all? If he's not here, we're still waiting for the official word, but Lane Johnson not being here, does it help or hurt the idea of the Eagles maybe running the ball a little bit more and sticking with it? The weather affected it last week, could affect it again today with the cold and the rain coming down at Lincoln Financial Field, and now Lane Johnson not being here. From my standpoint, I want to make sure that I'm still protecting the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. And I feel like the best way to do that is to put the ball as quickly as you can in a running back's hands. To me, it helps. And also, a guy like Jack Driscoll coming in, a backup offensive lineman, usually the way this goes is the offensive linemen are a little bit more keen to run blocking, the thud and done type of mentality of it all, as opposed to trying to hold that pass block for 3, 4, 5 seconds. So, Adam, do you think it's going to lead to them running the football a little bit more, or are they going to try to maintain the status quo and throw?
I think it's absolutely going to lead to them running it more, and I think that you're also going to see Jalen take off more. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to see that necessarily, but I think that to your point, having these guys be in pass protection mode, prolonged pass protection mode, isn't going to help them, at least on the right side of the line. So let them get out there and push. Let them get out there and drive. And look, we have running backs. We have people who can carry the ball that have the capability of breaking it off. We have people that have the capability of averaging 5 yards a carry. I mean, look, clock management, the more you run the ball, the better off we are. I think that we're going to see a lot more running plays.
More or less running, Seth?
Listen, the Buffalo Bills defense ranks 16th versus the run. They give up 110 yards per game. Against the pass, they rank 11th. They give up 204 yards through the air. That's pretty balanced. There's no one area that you would point to and say, they should attack that area. I expect for them to operate as normal. They may come out and try to establish the run game early, but ultimately once the game gets flowing, I can assure you that first 15 has got the majority of them a pass plays. That's just the way they're wired. That's the way they operate. The problem with the run game is Lane Johnson is a guy who loves to run block, and you can actually see him, when they get it cranked up, how fired up he gets. The problem is, in my opinion, you kind of become from the right guard to the left, dominant in your run, because I don't know that you can really trust running the ball outside or running the ball on the edges to Jack Driscoll's side. I'm just not sure of that. Now, you can go some 12 personnel, one back and 2 tight ends and put them both on that side and make a decision to run there, where you have strength. But, to my point, I'm just not so sure how much I can say with certainty how much the Eagles really want to run the football. If it gets messy, if it gets ugly like it was in Kansas City, they may be forced to run the ball a little more than they want to. But, man, it was coming down like it was raining buckets, and that didn't really deter them from really throwing the ball as much as they really wanted to. I mean, they put the ball in the air at a pretty good clip. They threw the ball 7 times, and they ran the ball 11 times in the first half of last week's game. I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see. You know me, man. Each and every week, I go to my stats to see, okay, this is where they should attack. This is what they should do, But nothing that I ever, could predict or the common sense that I would apply to, play calling ever comes to fruition, because they come out and they do something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
I got to tell you, though, what really impresses me or concerns me is those other games where we talked about what they should have done or shouldn't have done, and we talked about how we would predict it going this way or that way. With the exception of Mahomes, None of those other games had a guy who's at this stage of the season thrown for 2,800 yards. So from my perspective, the more we can keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands, the better off we are. So if, in a perfect world, if offensive coordinator Adam was out there, I would say keep those guys off the field, right? Let's run down that clock. And if we have the ability to keep our line healthy and keep our quarterback healthy and run down that clock and not give a guy who's got 2,800 passing yards and 22 touchdown passes at this point in the season an opportunity to control our game, I mean, that to me is how you have to win this game.
I have some unfortunate news to report. The inactives have just come out, and I'm getting this via Jeff McClain, who is saying that Lane Johnson is inactive today for the Bills game. The right tackle underwent an MRI and received treatment today after he woke up with groin soreness. Jack Driscoll likely to start in his place. So Lane Johnson now officially inactive for today's game against the Bills, and Driscoll expected to get the start there. So everything that we've been laying out looks like, unfortunately, is going to apply in this game as to how much the Eagles run, how much the Eagles choose to protect, and the way they protect Jalen Hurts in today's game. It should all be very interesting. When it comes to everything else in this game, I know one of the big buzzwords coming into this game has been a trap game, a letdown game. This is something I hate weighing in on because, spoiler, I never played in the NFL. But this gentleman over here to my left and to Adam's left did. His name is Seth Joyner. Seth, you are not a big buyer into the idea of a trap game. They're coming off an emotional win. If you're looking for something that is the definition of what should be a trap or letdown game, this very well would be it. Is it? And one of the reasons I still believe the Eagles will win this game, even with Lane Johnson, the news being out there, is I love this team's focus. I think one of the biggest differences that this team and any other team we've seen in the past, even last year's team, is the focus. But do you see this as a potential trap game, letdown game for the Eagles?
See, I'm the person that believes that confidence supersedes everything. And for this football team to go into Kansas City and come out of there with a win, I think that supersedes this thought about a trap game or a letdown game. Listen, this football team understands the importance of this 5-6 game stretch. They do. If there's ever a time for you to focus and be locked in, it's now. Because if you can come through this on the positive side of things, you're going to be sitting in a position where everyone's going to have to come to you in order to get to the big dance. That being said, I've never been a fan of the whole trap game just because, when you're playing the game of football and the game starts, your mind can be somewhere else until the first play when somebody tries to take your head off. And then once somebody tries to take your head off, now you're fully engaged. Now, if you went the entire week and you didn't prepare, okay, that's a lack of preparation. That's not necessarily that, that it was a trap game. If you took a team lightly, that's not a trap game to me. That's just you not being professional in what you do, and that doesn't come across as how this team and how these players and how this coach operates in any facet whatsoever. So I think, at the end of the day, they're going to come into this game. Yeah, they're going to be a little weary because they're not going to have their one of their leaders and their best player at right tackle. But I think this team has a certain amount of confidence rolling into this game this week, knowing that they went into, the Giants' lair and slayed them last week. Because that game, to me, like I said last week, it wasn't so much about the record as it was about their psyche, them understanding, knowing, and then going out there proving. Now they believe, and the confidence goes sky high that they just beat the team that took the Super Bowl championship from them last year.
I don't say this just because I'm sitting on the panel with you, but that's the best I've ever heard, that a trap game, letdown game can be nonsense depending on the schedule. Because the schedule that they have right now in front of them has been so often referred to as the gauntlet, Adam, and you've seen it. We've gone over it many times. It's that if you were going to have a letdown game, it was going to happen before this 5 or 6 game stretch. And maybe the Jets game, maybe that was that letdown game. But if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you're looking to prove that last year wasn't a fluke and Jalen Hurts' year as an MVP candidate wasn't a fluke or anything like that, if you're looking to prove it, this 5-6 game stretch really has everything. It's for all the marbles. because you have an opportunity here to beat a lot of the teams, the Dallas Cowboys twice, most notably, and also the San Francisco 49ers, also on that list, that could be competing with you for the number 1 spot in the NFC. So to lose focus for a team that has done such a fantastic job, especially over the last 2 years, of maintaining that focus and that motivation on top of it, it's crazy to think that at any point in this stretch that is circled with these 5-6 games, that they would lose focus during this time. And Adam, you followed this team long enough to realize that the focus and motivation they have with Nick Sirianni is something very special.
This team, I'm not worried about losing focus. I think they showed us so much last week with their halftime adjustments and coming back out. I'm not worried about them losing focus on this. I think that these guys are a bunch of winners. I think that Jalen Hurts is an awesome leader. I think Sirianni is doing a great job coaching. You know, they've got guys like Fletcher and Brandon Graham who've been around for a long enough time that they have the respect of all the young defensive players. The focus isn't what I'm worried about. These guys want to come out and they want to compete and they want to win. These guys are true competitors. They want to win every single game. And I look down the schedule, and it doesn't really matter who they're playing. You know, Buffalo, San Fran, you have Dallas, and you have Seattle. Look, we get through Buffalo, San Fran, and Dallas, they're going to start resting some players. You know, if we win those games, it's going to put them in a good enough position where we're going to be able to get our guys healthy for the playoffs. But, you know, focus isn't something that I'd worry about with this particular squad.
What is it, Seth, about Nick Sirianni? Because I know he's been called into question about his emotion, his enthusiasm after games, most recently now against Kansas City Chiefs, saying "see ya" to Kansas City Chiefs fans there as he walked off the field. I love it. I think this is a very emotional city. I think we're a very passionate city, and when you see that reflected in the head coach of your football team, I think most people like it. From a player's perspective, does that let you know that your coach is into it as much as you are?
Listen, I guess so. I mean, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. If Dan Campbell can talk about biting off people's kneecaps and going on with that kind of stuff, why is everybody so up in arms about, you know, Nick Sirianni letting the Chiefs fans have it? Because I'm pretty sure when he walked out of that same tunnel before the game, they were letting him have it. You know, so he's just supposed to be the bigger person just because that's the politically correct thing to do. If that's who he is, just be who you are. Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. Every coach coaches in a different way, and they coach the way that they need to coach for their team. Like when you look at a guy like Mike Tomlin, very serious, you know, a lot of cliches. You know, that's the way he feels he needs to coach his team. If this is the way that Nick Sirianni can get it done, and you can't dispute the guy's record, then just step back and let him be himself, because that's what's got this team to where it is. I just want to go back 1 second and talk about – go ahead, Adam.
No, I was going to say, the guys respond to that, Seth.
Absolutely.
The guys absolutely respond to that.
If the team takes on the personality of his coach, would you rather have a guy like that or a guy who stands there emotionless, no matter what's going on the field, and after the game – he's got 101 reasons and excuses why, okay? Mm-hmm. I wanted to go back because, you know, you guys were talking a minute ago about, I want to say.
We were on the trap game on that note.
Yes, but this is another thing. I know that the guys, especially Nick Sirianni, I think Nick Sirianni cares more than the players actually care. Okay, I know from a player's perspective, it's one of those things where, you know, inside, you know, you might hold it outside, but you don't outwardly talk about it. Like Jalen Hurts, you know, when people talked about what he could and what he couldn't be, he never fought you. He just went to work, and I'll show you. Well, the Eagles are 9-1, and this is the thing that like really pissed me off about the national media last week. No one wanted to talk about the job that the Eagles did winning the football game. Everybody wanted to talk about the drop balls and everything else that went on, and it was and how bad the Chiefs played. Okay, they didn't want to give the Eagles any credit for going on the road in a hostile environment and winning the game. Okay, I can tell you for sure, for certain, that kind of stuff motivates you from the inside. They might not outwardly talk about it, and no one is giving this team any credit. You look at the power rankings, the Eagles are not, you know, ranked, in my opinion, where they should be. No one wants to talk about how good they are and how they're winning games. They want to talk about the uneven level of play that we're seeing. Well, show me another team in the National Football League that's tearing it up, okay? The Cowboys beat the hell out of teams with all the wins that they have. Every single one of those teams have 4 wins or more or less, okay? The games that they lost against teams with winning records, okay?
And to the Cardinals.
And to the Cardinals. There you go. Then you take the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs don't look like the juggernaut that they've been, over the last 5 years. The Buffalo Bills are coming in here today. They don't look like the juggernaut that everyone, quote unquote, thought they would be. And you want to give credit to every other quarterback in the National Football League except for Jalen Hurts. When you watch these other quarterbacks struggle on the same level, you got Josh Allen. Yeah, he might have 22 touchdowns, Adam, but talk to me about how many interceptions he has and how many in 11 games he has 14 turnovers. 14 turnovers. Okay? But nobody wants to talk about that. But they'll want to talk to you about how many turnovers Jalen Hurts has. And they want to talk about how great the roster is, and that's why Jalen Hurts is succeeding. But when another quarterback has a great roster, they don't want to talk about their roster. Their quarterbacks are just, he's just a great player. Just nonsensical. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about a trap game and this 5-game window that's left right here, that's enough motivation for these players to say no matter what the circumstances are, we're here to prove everybody wrong. Everybody wrong. We've done it thus far, 9-1, best record in the league, in the National Football League by 2 games now, okay? And no one wants to give us credit. Jason Kelsey said it best. They don't like us, we don't give a damn.
unless we can find motivation in it, then we'll just bask in it for a second and make sure it's making them go over the level.
But they should find motivation in it.
I agree.
And I promise you, on some level they do, because I know the mindset of a player. I've been there before, where people talk about what you can and what you can't do, and they don't want to give you credit. They want to give the other team, the blame for not performing up to par as the reason why you won, instead of you being the reason why you won. Like, the quarterback doesn't just say, here's an interception. The running back doesn't say, here's a fumble. Those issues are forced. And when a team forces those, then you have to give that team credit for doing that. Jalen Hurts came out in the second half and figured out a way to overcome a 10-point deficit last week. And the defense figured out a way to hold Patrick Mahomes to 0 points. Why aren't we talking about that? Why can't you give credit where credit is due? If that's not motivation, along with the fact that if they can come through this 5-game stretch, like I said, on the positive side, then they got home field. You got to come to us. You got to come see us. You got to come to the link. You got to deal with our fans.
I really don't feel the need to say anything else. I think we're just going to let you keep going.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm voting.
I jump off this pedestal if I had my 30-year-old legs, but I'm gonna need a step.
Yeah, you're on the soapbox. No, hey man, I'm with you. You're preaching everything, and I think you're dead on accurate with it. When it comes to this Eagles team and last year, and we're up against it, but when it comes to the Eagles team and last week, the first thing that pissed me off was the idea that they were lucky that Patrick Mahomes threw an interception. They were lucky that Travis Kelce had that ball punched or fumbled the football. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, that's not called luck. That's called making a play, yes. Especially the Bradley Roby play. And then it led to the drops after that and how lucky the Eagles were. Sure, on the drops, yeah, maybe lucky, but every team has a little bit of luck on their side.
You know what the FF stands for?
What's that?
It's called forced fumble, okay? Not given fumble, a forced fumble. So all turnovers are forced one way or the other, There's no team out there trying to give the darn ball away.
Right.
So if the Eagles get if a team creates a turnover, it's created because they forced it.
Mm-hmm. Except for that back in the day Mark Sanchez butt fumble. We won't talk about that.
But
that's
he
for another
forced
day.
that.
The
butt forced.
No, or
that was
ass.
self-inflicted.
Yeah. Or dead ass, forced it. Anyway, All right, when we come back, Bill Colarulo is going to be joining us a little bit, but before we let you go, Adam, we got to let you know, or we got to ask you here, what is your official prediction here for Eagles and Bills today?
I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I have the Eagles 21-17 because I will never pick against my Eagles. So I have 21-17. I'm worried about the weather. I'm hoping that the Eagles take advantage of the clock and, Let's go to 10-1.
I'm skewing lower as well. Adam Malamut, Malamut Law here on the Malamut Law pregame show. Thanks so much for joining us. Great catching up with you as always. We'll be back in a few here on the Malamut Law